Record. Mm. So, all good. You, speaker, multi-speaker, change theme. They seem to change the controls on Zoom every month. It's updated and it's a different format. I was good at this 3 months ago, and now I feel like I've been de-skilled by technological advance. We live in a world of cyber chaos. Okay, so
There are, sir, I think we should begin now. It's 2:04.
happy to do so.
Yeah, okay. So, very good afternoon to all of you. We have 26 participants, and I hope more are joining. Today, as you know, is the last session of the online course, and there are two lectures by Professor John Hutnick and Dr. Samata Biswas, who is also a colleague and an initiator of this course. The first lecture will be by Professor Hutnick. Professor John Hutnick is currently Associate Professor in Sociology at Ton Duc Thang University, Vietnam, and in 2024, a visiting professor at Bonn University, Germany. Dr. Samata Biswas is assistant professor in the Sanskrit College and University, and also a member in Calcutta Research Group. After the two lectures, will actually have a closing remarks, kind of conclusion of the entire course by Professor Shoboshachi Basuroy Choudhury, who will join us shortly, and will do a wrapping up of kind of a summary of the entire course. We will also hopefully have some time to maybe talk about any queries from all the participants and any issues, any problems, and we have not yet received, I think, 5 or 6 assignments which are pending. So we'll have some time for that. Right now, we'll just start, and I give over to Professor Hutnick for the first lecture of the series. And sir, it is now your time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to have been invited. Let me see if I can work out how to find this to share my screen again. Okay, so I have some PowerPoint slides just to help us go. Can you see that well? Can you see the first slide?
Yes. It's visible.
Yeah. Okay, so I took the title. I didn't know the audience really. I tuned in for a few of the sessions. I couldn't make all of them. Didn't know the audience completely. So I'm guessing a little. And I've changed my plan a little, of course, as I listened to the previous speakers, a few of them. But I still want to stick to this first idea that came from making and unmaking of cities, like literally to think about how the city is made, built on silt that comes from the river, and talk about two deltas, the one being the Mekong Delta, where I kind of live nearby, in a big city nearby that delta, and the one where I've done some visits before. I'm not, like everybody has said, not an expert on Bengal, but yeah, I've spent some time. And so I'm calling this Built on Silt but Gold. As you see, that's a colonial reference to Kipling and so on. And I'm a film studies scholar sometimes, and I wanted at first to make this about film. But yeah, I've changed my mind a little bit, but still I'm thinking about films because I wanted to hold the river and the city together. And the first way to think about doing that when Bengal is involved is to think about, well, the relationship between the country and the city. For Marx is a big thing, but also. Look, I'm guessing that most of you have already seen these films, and And me saying from outside anything new about Ritok Katak is probably impossible. But what I had in mind, I kind of made a mistake. I had in mind Sita from Subarnarekha, and I wanted to contrast that with Samata Biswas's film Satanya Sambad, the construction of the city. So the importance of the river and the construction of the city. But actually, my mistake was that I was thinking more about Megadakatara and Shankar singing those Tagore songs as he walked alongside the river, right? That was the image that was in my head, and how important this was for the city. And then I wanted to contrast how people come into the city and bring culture with them to what had happened in the American War here in Vietnam, in the Delta. And there's a beautiful film called Can Dong Hang, which is translates as The Abandoned Field, made in 1979, and is all shot in one field, which is a flooded field in the plain of reeds in the Mekong Delta, and by director Win Hong Sen, and includes some fantastic scenes of the fight against the Americans in the war, but it really evokes the idea of the Delta. And the Delta was kind of, abandoned field refers somehow to the way in which the American war cleaned out the rural side, drew everyone into the city as refugees. Right, so you can see what I'm thinking about. Ritok Katak's film, which is all about partition and drawing people into the city, basically Calcutta, I'm thinking of here, and what happened with the abandoned field. But I'm including the abandoned field because next month, April the 30th, is the 50th anniversary of the end of that American war. It's called the American War, but you know it from Hollywood cinema as the Vietnam War. And of course, it's 76 years, 71 years since the defeat of the French and the French Vietnamese War. And of course, it's 70 odd years since partition, 50 years since the Bangladesh War, right? So these kind of flows of refugees is what I was thinking of in these films. But also technology. What you can see here, please note the train in the background. This is a kind of Ritok Katak tribute, I guess, to Satyajit Ray. Isn't it a little bit of Apu in there? And I want to think about the technology that brings people to the city. One, the case of trains. The other one, the war machine, if you like, right? Dragging people into strategic hamlets. I'm not saying these are the same, but this is what I wanted to start thinking about. Not just the songs, but partly the songs and partly the sound, which I can't really show. I have risked showing bits of film on Zoom presentations before, but they clog up and stop. But you can imagine this sound. They've been rehearsing for the 50th anniversary of the end of the war this last week with helicopters flying over the city, and you hear this helicopter sound, right? So you've got to imagine that. And when we watch films, we have to listen as well, is what I'm saying, and think about mood and atmosphere. The picture I have from Ritok Katak here is the end of the train line, which hits the river, right, where the train line meets the river on the West Bengal side. And this very emotive moment with, anyway, I'm not going to say, there's a lot that could be said about these films, but I'm not going to talk about cinema so much today as to think about what this means. This is Komoganda, right? 1961. I'm not going to talk about films as such or cinema studies as such, but what they say about, what they might be able to say about migration, okay, and the need to rebuild lives. To another part of it, of course, I'm don't want to just destroy any films by giving spoilers, but you can see the beautiful revolutionary with a gun. Vietnam has a kind of monopoly on that image. She shot down the helicopter, and I wanted to just make a little joke, I suppose. In Srabanareka at the end, when Binu and Ishua is going to rebuild their lives at the end, we see this image of the rice paddy. And somehow I feel like in Candong Huang, there's a celebration of that, but also echoed was the smoke coming from the helicopter that she's just shot down. This is the mum. She has to go and rebuild her life. The Americans have killed. She has to rebuild everything. They've killed her husband and so on. She then heads to the city, right? Well, I assume the city. Now I'm thinking of, here's your Minister for Education, Mad Mr. Paul and his rebuilding of the city. And in contemporary films, in a film here called Kandong Batan from a novel by Win Nok Tu. She's a Delta-based novelist whose work is really great. Endless Field, it's called in English. I sent the links. I'm sure people didn't have enough time to see it. But I want to contrast this scene where if you're listening to the film, it's a beautiful rural scene, but what you see over the top is the announcement from the government in Hanoi announcing the duck cull because of bird flu. Right, so this pestilence of bird flu transforms destroys rural ways of living, and of course, Bratya Basu. I don't want to say anything particular about this much beloved man from the government. JU students will certainly have. Let's not talk about that so much, but you know what's been in the news this month with him. Okay, so. Talking about the Delta, I want to talk about a bunch of books. I'm just putting these up just for indication. Debjani Bhattacharya's book on empire and ecology, Anu Jalay's Forest of Tigers, and Amitesh Mukhopadhyay's Living Disasters is really important for the Bengal side. Quagmire by David Briggs and The Country in the City by Raymond Williams has been important for thinking about the Vietnam side. And I'm working through this with partly the novels of Son Nam, which is this Buffalo Boy, and Win Nok Tu made the film about the duck farm, basically, life on the river. Floating Field is another translation of the title. Thinking about it in terms of John Bellamy Foster's work on ecology and metabolic rift. I hope to say a lot more about metabolic transformation. That's a relationship and the balance between nature and humans and how we get that wrong, basically, and the debt that we have to this balance. And these are the posters of the film. I've just put them up to orient where we are. Right, so you have this as a record on the tape. The three with Rizwakata films. I'm not saying they are equivalent films or they're related, but in some ways they are doing this because, yeah, there would be too much to say to show how these images work as tributes. But I hope to take out this idea of rebuilding life and rebuilding the city, making the city and unmaking the city that's involved. That for me spins out, comes from thinking about these books and films. And now I want to narrow the issues a little bit. So talk about animals and talk about technology and urbanization. You can see I have the cliched animals here. There aren't any tigers left in the Mekong Delta because humans have industrialized the delta, and there aren't so many humans allowed to stay in the Sundarbans because this is the story of Anu Jalay. She talks about the relationship between humans and tigers, but it's the World Wildlife Fund that came with its original pro-tiger, and also the Left Front government. Talking about this. So animals and tourism, I guess, because, well, let me think about these images from films and just images in general, right? we see this tiger by the river on the one side, and we see humans living on or beside the river in their other photograph. I guess there's a lot I want to say about all this as well, but let's just look at this. All right, let's look at what we can see in the photograph. We have a logo of the tiger one, the logo of the tiger, the name of the Sundarbans, an itinerary for the tour, a picture of a tiger, a bit damp, and some the edge of the delta water there, and some bonus tracks, if you like, a tiger attack survivor video. That's almost like a cliche, right? Of tiger law, and local dance video, the other exoticism. And if you look at what I'm trying to get at with this coupling of these photographs together, the photograph of what can you see? Ask yourself what you can see in the photograph on the Vietnam side. We see a kind of house on stilts by the river, bit makeshift in many ways. That's because it has to cope with rising and lowering water. We see a woman on a boat. She's wearing a non-la, a traditional, so it's a bit exotic. This is not exactly a tourist photo, but it is a little bit. And we see on her boat this engine. David Briggs and I got very interested in these engines, right? So let me talk about them a little bit. It's the May Collet, right? That's what it's called. And May means engine. Collet is a name from well, it's where they come from. They're manufactured in Collet, Wisconsin, and they, after the war, flooded the delta. Flooded them. No, that's use of a metaphor that's probably Biggs uses that metaphor. These engines were all over the place. They were used for irrigation. They were used for boats, as you saw, and they are hundreds of thousands of them appeared in the delta. They're a piece of technology. They could be mounted on, and it could do many things. Right? So it was used to irrigate small scale rice paddy. Okay. So I wanted to hold on to this idea of technology flooding the delta. Of course, other technologies come to the delta, but this Collet is from the Kohler company in Wisconsin, really important. Put in the middle a little joke. They also Kohler made the electronic sink. Now, I'm thinking about metabolic rift and electronic sink. Electric and sink doesn't, for me, go together very well. You know what? Electricity and water that's a bad mix. But anyway, a little bit of a joke. But here you see the engine, and I became a bit obsessed with these engines because there's so many. You can go to like stores in Kamau, which have got hundreds of them still, and they are ubiquitous in the way that other kinds of technology are also ubiquitous in the and so on. But I mean, May Collet is being recycled and repaired as well. But there are also whole industries of repair that have also flooded the delta. But that's another story I'm not going to get into so much. And I wanted to think also in terms of big technology. So the technology of hydro dams. It's not the same level at all, but it really affects the delta and therefore affects the city. You see on the map here the Mekong, which starts in the Himalaya, as does the Ganga, right? But on the other side of the Himalaya, so we're sharing some sort of mythic origins. But well, there are lots of dams on the Ganga as well, but not as big as the ones that China has produced, the hydro dams, which fuel the Chinese economy at present. And there are more planned, and some in Laos and some in Cambodia, that are really changing the ecology of the delta, really changing the way in which the delta and so the city is lived. So a bit of a God's eye view. This is the contrast with what's happening in the delta now. So because the water rate flow of the river is changing, the economy is changing from rice economy, which you see bit of a God's eye view, a Google Map type thing. On the one side, there's rice paddies, all neat, and many of them changing to industrialized prawn production, which is covered in factories and in I mean some of it's outdoors, of course, in rice fields, but a lot of it is processed manufacture plant factories, basically, and industrialized. And I wanted to talk about that because, again, the green paddy field and the tourist-like photo contrasts with industrialization in a way that makes me think, or allows us to think about the ways in which technology and culture crash into each other in this so-called metabolic rift. Not to say that the rice economy has not also changed the environment, but the prawn economy is a different level of industrialization. And it's very interesting because of that economy, people are migrating into the city. And it's changing the city. So it's city-based companies are industrializing the Delta, and that's forcing, in a way, well, the dams partly because of the changed flow of the river, the changed flood pattern of the Delta, the lack of silt that comes down, right? The lessening of silt that comes down means salinization is coming up the river further, and more land is not available for rice because rice won't grow in salt water. But brackish water economy, which means prawns basically, is thriving. And we see that on some, well, we'll see that in some maps in a second. First, I should say that this is not just people from the city of Ho Chi Minh City that are developing this new industrialization, but also Australian companies are moving in. This is probably Viet Cube, but still, with new technologies and educated generations and so on, and very all about clean prawn and so on. Yeah, but they use partly the Collet engine to clean the water, to keep the water circulating for the prawn hatcheries. But the startup costs for prawn are quite big. And the thing is, only this kind of Australian company or a large Ho Chi Minh City-based company can really afford the startup costs. A rice farming concern, like a family rice farm, a small paddy plot, and so on, has been successful for people for a couple of generations. Not for everyone, but those who own paddy. But the startup costs for moving into prawn are so much that quite often people prefer to sell up and move to the city. And which is interesting because it has two different layers of class fractions, if you like, that migrate. The wealthy who sold their farms and moved to the city to be with their children who are in higher education, and their former workers, which are then displaced, no longer live on the land. Think of Marx's concept of the enclosures and so on. Then they move to well, either to the city, regional cities, or to urban kind of dormitory type living, and they work in these large factories, but not as many, of course. Not everyone gets jobs, so a lot also migrate into the city as the urban poor. Yeah. So the engine is there, but also this other big technology is there as well. Two levels of technology we have to distinguish. Of course, it's a big export industry, prawn. This photograph I've stolen from a TV show from May, one of my students who kindly showed me the show. I love this image of a guy working on his computer wearing a hard hat. One should always wear a hard hat when one uses a computer. It's very dangerous work. But of course, it's also big ports. There is reason to wear a hard hat as well in the ports, which are heavy industrial shifting and loading in great containers to send prawn to Australia. And there they are, right? So there's prawns. Look at the statistics of migration in the last few years. And we see that basically for Ho Chi Minh City, um, I've shown the graph, but I won't drill deep into the graph right now, but I have done to explain this. The last 2 or 3 years, I've got some really close statistics here. The last 2 or 3 years, Ho Chi Minh City's increased its population by about 250,000 persons. So in a city of 9 million, that's another million every 4 years at the rate we're going. It's massively increased since 2019. I have a statistic for 2022 as well now, and it's continued to increase. And more than half of that increase has come from the Delta. Some's come from the north, from the cyclone-affected areas. This will, of course, resonate with anyone who knows much about the Sundarbans. But yeah, movement into the city in Ho Chi Minh or in Vietnam is largely coming from the Mekong Delta to the figure of like 1,000 a year. And that's shown here in these statistics. And it's largely because of prawn. But the prawn is largely because of the dams, which has changed the nature of the river, which has upset the ecological, the so-called metabolic rift, the exchange of humans and nature, which was not as dramatic with rice as it is with prawn. Okay. So you can see some maps of the Delta where I demonstrate. This is three maps, 2009, 2015, 2021. And I guess quickly, if you just look at the pink area on the first one, you see that's saltwater or prawn farming. It becomes light blue in the second one, and there's a bit further into the Bac Lieu area. And then in the third one, it's called salt in this one, but it means salt brackish water economy, which is mostly prawns, but other kinds of small fish too, which are farmed. But it's taken over much more of the area. And actually, if you drill deep into this, you'll see also that fruit farms have reduced considerably because, yeah, they're not very suitable for brackish water where salination has happened. And also the nature of the floodplain has changed the rice production because the river should flood it has a cycle of flooding which distributes silt over the delta, and because the water flow is governed by Chinese dams, basically, it's changed, and the silt is not distributed in the delta anymore in the same way. It is to a degree, there's still flooding. Okay, we can see this in Bengal as well. Also, because of time, I will not say too much about this, also because you all know it much better than me, probably. But I was very interested to look at these two statistical maps, one from 2001, one from 2011, which is not recent, but this process is very interesting because you see the migration from Bangladesh into India, and that's all they're talking about here. So not from the Delta into Calcutta, but from Bangladesh into India was, first of all, largely rural, but increasingly, especially in the north, became urban migration. That's I'd like to drill a lot deeper into this sort of thing. I know graphs don't tell you everything, and in fact, statistical work like this, you basically make up the answers you want, and then you ask the questions to get the answers and so on. But it's still also very striking when it shows something like this that we have to investigate. So this scene of Paul and Paul, Mr. Paul's intervention as a builder, removing the slums and building new condos is very crucial to this. And Calcutta certainly is like like Ho Chi Minh as well. I look out the window and I can see every time I look out the window, I see a new condo has gone up, it seems, right? And the city is growing and growing, and going further and further south, right? As is Calcutta, the Royal Ganges is. I mean, this is a bit exoticist too. It's a great photo of the beautiful condos that we can all aspire to, and they're sold in these. The Telegraph and the Statesman have these wraparound advertisement pages. I should have taken a photo of one of those, and so. But so also here. I mean, these ones are interesting. There's a advertising photo, and then the actual photo, which shows that the building of this planned utopia is not really happening. But in the advertising photo, the one on the left, you see they've erased the city pretty much, and they've put it further away to pretend that you're down in the beautiful south, and so on. But what's happening is that this area, which is right where I'm living, is prone to flooding now because the flood of the Mekong of the Delta is kind of shifted into the city because building more and more condos on what was swampland has lowered the water table or changed the water table such that we now experience floods in the city. I recently built underpass on the road on the left-hand side, and the flood defenses, which are not yet complete but almost complete, to protect the city. Basically, it's flooding to about 2 foot deep where I live every time there's a full moon. The moon changes the tide a little bit, enough to bring it up to not quite enough to enter into our underground car park, but certainly much of the city goes underwater for large parts of the time, largely as a fact of building accommodation for the people that are migrating into the city. I mean, the well-to-do as well as the poor. So, it's Mr. Paul, but there are Vietnamese versions, of course, and the supply that they've got, I want to show is something about the metabolic exchange between the rural or the river and the city. It's sand. You'll see just this week, 44 people have been put on trial for illegal sand mining, which is dredging the rivers, basically, dredging the Mekong Delta and bringing sand into the city to build these condominiums that so many people are living in. And this is a huge, huge industry. The photo on the right, you'll see, is a bit curious because of the eyes on the barges, right? They are barges coming down from Cambodia. They're Khmer barges. So tags the theme of culture coming into the city, I suppose, in some kind of twisted way. But this is basically sand silt of the river. What's there, what is being reduced by the upstream dams, is what builds the city, what makes the city. But it's unmaking the city as well because it's destroying the rural and the relationship between rural and countryside. This is what metabolic rift is all about. I'm a bit critical of John Bellamy Foster and others like Kohi Saito and so on. There's quite a number of books that have been produced by this monthly review clique of Marxists. Love them as I do, and yet we have to be critical of any forms of intellectual bandwagonism. They've picked up on a small part of Marx's work where he was reading in the 1850s the work of Liebig, a German soil scientist, and so the relationship between waste and economy, humans, the city and the rural, and wanted to talk about ecology. And then on the back of this, Bellamy Foster's made a critique of those who said Marx never discussed ecology. He said, yes, he did. He was the first to discuss ecological issues and environmental issues among Marxisms. And yeah, the robbery of nature is the theme that comes from Liebig, but there's a whole other dimension of it that plugs into Marx's early interest in Epicurus and Democritus and other thinkers of the good life, and his last big book was Socialism and Ecology. Sorry, interesting slip. The Return of Nature. The big sensation, though, is this super successful book, Slow Down, by Kohei Saito, a Japanese scholar from the Todai, from the University of Tokyo, philosophy department, which Zizek and Badiou, they've said ecology is the new opium for the masses. Well, it's certainly been super successful. His argument is something, he's really good on Marxist notebooks and so on, but he also thinks, Marx left his work incomplete. Everyone says that, of course. And my view is that was the point. We have these tools. It's incomplete because we have to do the work for our context. Nomine mutato. He basically says this is the story of capitalism in England in the 18th century, but it's a warning for those in Germany and for elsewhere. And we have to read it again. But Kohei Saito is very good on the need to return to balance again the metabolic equation, the metabolic rift, the relationship of humans to nature, and this will have implications for how we think of the city, right, and how we think of trade and so on. He wants to slow down, and that metaphor is maybe where there could be a critique, because it's a kind of liberal green metaphor, but there are critiques of Bellamy Foster as well. Yeah, so to not be Mr. Pole, to not be the super developer, but also to think about how the culture of the rural enters into the city or is in a relationship with the city seems to be the work that needs to be thought through. And it's the green spaces in the city that I think that make me think about this. The one on the right is the view from my bedroom window of one of the last mangrove forests within the center-ish of the city, right? And pretty close to the center of the city here. And it's there's a fish farm in the front that seems to be expanding. They've just added an extra pond. And there are plans for this 27 hectares of mangrove forest, right? It's in District 7. District 7 is very built up in other parts, so you can't tell from the brochure on the left, but they want to make a super city in that 17 hectares. You see on the right-hand side. Part of it is going to be a super marina for the billionaire yachts of they actually said in the brochure, I should have had evidence of this, that it would be the yachts of people like Elon Musk, the new president, sorry, the cyber president or whatever he is, the new techno-fascist king of the world. And here's his little his little orange partner in crime. Coming to with his yacht. And, I'm a bit dismayed by this, partly because I left my yacht in Sydney, right, and didn't bring it with me to Vietnam, as if I'd have a yacht. Couldn't afford it, but it's going to raise prices, and there's not that much thought to the fact that we need these mangrove, these green spaces in the city. They can erase the rest of the city as they've done. I mean, you see the brown area behind the modeling, sort of reduced District 7 to low rise, which it's not at all. It's massively full of those high rise apartments. So where are we at? I got these things to juggle, if you like. the hydro dams and the effect of those on the river and the delta, on the whole ecology, because of siltation, because of erosion, because of the disruption of the flooding cycle, because of the change then in the economy from rice to brackish water, which is much more industrialized and not family businesses, but has to be done by DFI, direct foreign investment. And then the kind of DFI theory as well is coming in to think about this. We've got migration issues of the dual levels of migration. Those families that move into the city to build and buy condos or to live in they also need sand, concrete to build them, to live in these massive houses. There's villas basically that are hugely enormous villas that are fashionable all through the south of Ho Chi Minh City. And of course, the influx of a million people every 4 years is massive for a city that is if a third of those people are wealthy enough to buy cars, our future is doomed because most of the roads are 2 lanes and they're designed for motorcycles, which are basically a make-ole, a small engine like the irrigation engine on wheels, basically. The Honda Win and other small vehicles, which is a great aspect of I'm not saying everyone should go back to bicycles, but a great aspect of life in Ho Chi Minh City. Here's a more extreme version of what you see out of my window at sunrise and their planning documents. This one on the right is from another of their documents. Looks like Disneyland or some kind of weird fantasy utopia, but this is the one that mentions the yacht club for Elon Musk and so on. It's not going to happen. But this is the kind of contrast between fantasy of the city and the reality of people who live and how we live and how we need to live, and the issue of what will be needed to both replenish the rural and to live in the city on this floodplain, basically, this swamp that is being turned into that's being paved with concrete, and silt from the river is being used to concrete over the lungs of the land, basically. So we need to think about and discuss lots of things here. Metabolic exchange between the river and the city, and how that is an exchange of migration, flows of labor and of culture, and co-constituted together. Delta and the history of technology, Delta and water, Delta and planning. This is a new kind of enclosure of the environment and a new monetization of water, basically. This is something from Debjani Bhattacharya that I got very much, that in law and in planning, there was monetization of the liquidity of the land that Calcutta was also built on. I guess the issue of heritage is a factor here. The children of the rich families that made money from rice aren't going to inherit their rice paddy plots, which would be kind of romantic and acceptable, because they are being sold off to prawn industry, and you don't really have the same kind of inheritance. If your family handed over a prawn farm, it's not quite the same as the family's ancestral land, a paddy plot with the ancestors actually situated on site, right? They are removed when the factories are put up. So yeah, this is why this is what I'm struggling wrangling with at present, trying to think of how I can think through this metabolic exchange literature, make a critique of it while using material from the lived experience, how we're living in the city and the rural, and how we need to balance that together. And I hope that's of interest to you all. I know I've gone to about 42 minutes now, so I'm going to come to a stop. Thank you for listening. And I hope if you want to look at any of the other images again and talk about them, I hope they will generate some questions and discussion And yeah, thank you very much. Is that okay?
Thanks, thanks, Professor Hutnik, for that very, very fascinating lecture and many new dimensions, Ganges and the Mekong Delta and doing so through films, through how the region has developed through different from agricultural economy to industries and how the kind of city building is happening right now also in the city sprawling beyond the boundaries of the cityscape in both the regions and this peculiar position of the delta plains and what kind of city making uh, what kind of city making emerges in the two contexts. So yeah, the floor is now open for questions and comments, and I think there's a lot that can be discussed, but we have only around 15-20 minutes. 15 minutes.
So I know it's your practice to ask questions in the chat, but I can't see. Oh, yeah, there it is. So I pull up the
Oh,
chat.
I'll read out if any question comes in the chat, I'll read it out.
Okay.
But people can also raise their hands and ask questions.
You can also critique me for my lack of really insight into the films of Ritwik Gatak. I'm very keen to know more about, to explore more of these films. I watched them again, preparing for this first time or third time I've seen them, but once every 15 years, and it's just surprising how much I didn't understand the first times, or how I understood it as something completely different this time, which is great. It's how it should be.
Can I? Yeah, so I wanted to ask if you could then give us a presentation because I was not able to write down all the films that I would be really interested to see further. So I wanted to ask, it's not really a question, but more of a comment. So first, how you got into this kind of research and how you connected also to film studies, because I'm interested in that and I would be interested in this kind of connection.
Great, yeah. Okay. For starters, I fully plan to send the PowerPoint and the references are already there. I did send them, but they didn't appear in that brochure. But they are about. But there's also a recording now, I believe. So yeah, I'm happy to share more. My plan is to write something along this line. So I was using this talk as an opportunity to try and think with you, to try and get myself to think about how we could do this. And I guess it's a kind of cheat in some ways to use films instead of ethnography. I'm trained in anthropology, allegedly. Right. I used to go to these meetings. That's like Alcoholics Anonymous. Hi, my name's John, and yes, I'm an anthropologist. I read my last ethnography. But since I haven't been as often to Bengal lately, like I went every year from 1987 to COVID. Every year I visited, and I wrote my first book, Rumor of Calcutta, and always did work and was there in JU very often, at Jadapur with Moynak and the film studies department, people especially. So I became a kind of accidental film scholar, anthropologist because of them. And then Amitesh Mukbare and Anu were close colleagues, so I got to know their work really well and became very interested in the Sundarbans and migration issues, right? And so now I want to see how these connect together and think about them as a kind of a gnawing away, a kind of irritant to allow me to critique and use, to rethink and repurpose the work that's being done around ecology by this American Monthly Review mob. Right? They're generating so much theory right, about ecology and about the metabolic rift and about 1850s soil science and so on, but they are not connected with contemporary issues and contemporary migrants and or contemporary ecology as much. Right? It's more like theorizing ecology. And I kind of think you've got to put the people back in and the animals. That's a whole other side we didn't get into, but the relationship with animals is problematic. Anu Jalai's book, Forest of Tigers, really does that well about the symbiotic relationship between tigers and other animals. She keeps on listing tigers, crocodiles, snakes, and it's almost like a mantra in that book. But there are many other animals imbricated within the human. Well, in the same way, the river, I think, is imbricated in the human. That's true for all of us. If you grew up, I don't know where you grew up, but Beatrice. But a lot of the Bengalis grew up on a river, right? They're on the Hooghly, and the Hooghly is so important. They grew up listening to Tagore songs, which are made to be sung next to the river, right? In a way, that's at least the Gatak films force that. And so somehow, I also want to make think that it's really important to think of how nature is in the city. Although we're paving over it, we're concreting over it, we're using the river to concrete over the rivers, right? The floodplain of the river, so, which is necessary, it seems, for the land to breathe in a way. This cycle of flooding and silting, which allowed the economy of the rural and therefore was a part of culture, is being destroyed by the process that's profiting from that culture, that rural culture, where it's industrializing the delta, or it's turning it into tourism. Right? Tourism also uses a lot of sand and concrete, building hotels. Not so much in the Sundarbans, where often the hotels are made of bamboo and other, more rustic exoticism, right? But there are also big, expensive hotels being built and so on. Even the small houses, though, need sand, need concrete now, and that's dredged from the rivers. There really is. I haven't seen the studies on the way in which the Ganga siltation in the Ganga is changing. And the different dams that manage the water there, and it's different science, but I've seen a little bit of it. But there's something there, and so I'm hoping in my visit later this year, I'll be in November, I'm coming to do research to really dig into that, so to speak. Does that answer your question in some way?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
I may say something.
Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I shouldn't really, but I still must. I'm also, like Beatrice, interested in your method, because this is, I'm very, very keen to understand the way in which you're hoping to use the images, because I'm also trying to do something with a very image-heavy ethnography for the last few years, but because I'm not convinced about the method, that I've not figured out how to go about it. So I would really love it if you reflected a bit more on your use of the photographs like you did now as a part of your method. And I must also read out, just to relieve Kaushali, Professor Shomadar wants you to reflect on ecology as the new opiate. Or do you think ecology is the new opiate, and do you want to comment on it?
Yeah. Okay, for the first one, that's a really important question. Thank you for that. And it really is, it's a burning issue for me, right? Because for financial reasons, for institutional reasons, because I have to get under the new bureaucracy of all universities, you have to get so many permissions and so on. The old style of ethnography is harder to do, and yet I still think, and I just recently published, very important part of ethnography is that you should go to have a look for yourself. Right? Not that I think that eyewitnessing is the only or is it even true in any sense, right? Just because you saw it doesn't mean it's true. As the idea of, when I grew up, we had a TV show, the news program in Australia, in Melbourne, where I grew up, was called Eyewitness News. And it was like a forerunner of NBC or CNN or something. It was so ideological, but it was called Eyewitness News because they wanted to say the eye doesn't lie, the camera doesn't lie. But of course, the camera does lie, right? A photograph is 1 second in time, in the flow of time. It's two-dimensional. It's small. It fits on a screen, and you can ship it about. Sita is not really like that, and doesn't convey the story of the film as well, or the drama, or the emotion. But in a way, it's a tag for me. It's just a tag for something that I want to use then to critique something else. And in some sense, the ethnography is always that as well. Any kind of research is an interpretation of events that you then use to make a provocative point. So here's the thing: is I don't really think we're in the business of being truthful, but we're not. Knowledge is not saying some kind of ultimate truth. It's raising questions and provoking us to think about how these meanings come into being. And so that is the answer to Ranabia's good question as well. Why is Zizek and Badiou saying ecology is the new opiate? It's part of the I guess for them, they're saying it's hot topic and trendy on topic cliche in some sense, right? It's the opiate of the masses and so on. And yet, of course, even if you're not great scholar of Marx like me, if you're like Ranabia, you know his stuff well, you'll see that if you expand the quote opium of the masses that Marx mentions, you'll see he says opium of the masses, the first cry of the oppressed, right? And the context is a much wider context of how religion, I suppose, is part of the search for meaning and expression, and it's not just saying that religion is not to be thought through, but it's a way in which people hold on to meaning making. We can expand from that to think about a lot of things. He gets the phrase probably from Heinrich Heine, the Romantic poet who was his friend in Paris in the 1840s. They used to sit in the 1850s. No, the 1840s. Yes. Late 40s, sit in Paris and debate every night. And apparently Heine had saved his child from some illness at some point, and they became like attached as friends for life. So Heine had come up with this phrase, although it's used in Hegel as well, and even earlier in other thinkers. I forget exactly who right now, but I can track that down. Heine and Marx together, they were both students at different times of August Wilhelm Schlegel, the Orientalist, or the first Indologist, if you like, in some ways. The guy who translated the Bhagavad Gita into Latin, right? Not into German. I mean, there had been an English translation by Jones some years before, but Schlegel translates the Gita into Latin, of all things, because that language is more. He was a translator of Shakespeare as well, so Marx was reading him. He was a translator of Cervantes and Camoens, who wrote about Vasco da Gama. So there's always this the dimension of Indology has this world perspective, and somehow Heine, I think, tapped into that and brought Marx away from his Hegelian cult status. So in some ways, that's in line with the kind of work that Foster and co are trying to do with the notebooks of Marx as well, to take Marx in different directions for the contemporary period. And that's what we should always do. This whole thing about Marx is incomplete, I think that's really enabling. Yes, he's incomplete. That was his point. He actually says in the very first preface to Capital, he expects a reader who's willing to learn something new. Mutaton, you want to change the world, but you also want to change your interpretation. And that means taking these concepts and thinking them in a new place. So, yeah, do I believe ecology is a new opium? I think it's the name for a theme of a new exoticism on one level, and yet we must think about our relationship to the planet, because it's pretty evident that we are destroying it, which is a bit desperate and sad, actually. And I feel completely helpless in the face of that, like this opium addiction to concrete, to intravenous concretization of our world is an illness, but then a contagion, a virus, an infection. These are the metaphors that Marx already uses for the commodity as well. Remember, the commodity was like a contagion.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think we have to shift to the next lecture. And anyone who has, I'm sure,